we've spent a lot of time and effort looking into like how can we build Lightning and offer that in a non-custodial way to our extremely normie retail user base. And you just can't, not in a non-custodial way. I think what you guys have done though is found a way to offer it to the retail non-custodial, or sorry, to the retail user base, but you have to do it in a custody way to kind of reduce that friction of maintaining liquidity across channels, dealing with these different weird state managements and opening, closing channels for users. None of these people they never need to know this stuff.
Welcome back to Token Narratives with Bitcoin.com, where we discuss the biggest stories shaping the Bitcoin and cryptoverse. I'm Graham, repping the marketing function at Bitcoin.com. With us this week, we have David from the news team and Bitcoin.com CEO Corbin Fraser, who's back from 2 weeks on the conference tour. We missed your energy last week, Corbin, but we did manage to soldier on without you.
I'm glad you guys did. I saw some of the clips and stuff. I'm happy to see things going, even when I'm not here. It's reassuring.
We're also very excited to have Cole from Coinos.io, which is a Bitcoin Lightning wallet with the team based out of Vancouver. And we'll be picking Cole's brain on Lightning Network and other Bitcoin Layer 2s, hoping to get his unique perspective as a builder who's working in the Bitcoin as a medium of exchange space. Before we get to that, we'll start off with our usual markets gut check. But first, we've got two very quick promos from Bitcoin.com. Just a moment, please. First up, we've got the first season of Bitcoin.com's Verse token airdrop is underway. And you can, with something like $400,000 of Verse up for grabs. So if you're a user of Bitcoin.com's products, such as our self-custody multi-chain wallet, there's a good chance you're eligible to claim Verse. Check it out at verse.bitcoin.com. And remember, this is just the first season, so stay tuned for season 2 details. The other thing we've got to tell you about here is that our very own MasterCard debit card, which we lovingly call the V card, is now available. It's a prepaid card where you top up with BTC, BCH, stablecoins, and of course, our very own Verse token. And you can spend your balance anywhere MasterCard is accepted. You can get the card for a discount using Verse, and we're working on special rewards for Verse holders. So if you're looking for a way to spend your gains, consider V card. You can find a link to it at Bitcoin.com.
I was just going to show mine, but I've lost my V card. Don't know where it is.
Yes.
Did you lose it while you were touring, Corbin?
No, I'm sure I got it back. I was using it for coffee on the flights home. So it's here somewhere. I'm a moron.
All right, with the promos out of the way, let's get into it. We'll start off with our guts check. How are you guys feeling about the markets this week? We're still in that range, basically, but it's been an up week with Bitcoin moving from, I think, below 58K to about 61K towards the end of this week. That's like a 7-day gain of about 5.5%. And we're recording this, by the way, on Friday morning. Japan time. We're getting towards the end of summer, which means the traditionally bullish for Bitcoin fourth quarter of the year is right around the corner. And the markets have held up like a champ, to be honest, despite selling from a number of big sources, including the German government, the US government, and recently even jump trading. Also, something like 70% of Mt. Gox creditors now have access to their long-lost Bitcoin but we haven't seen mass sell-offs from that. So I'm personally feeling bullish. How about you, Corbin? Love to get your perspective as someone who's just come back from some in real life events. What's the vibe out there like?
Yeah, honestly, this is the first time I'm looking at the charts in like 2 weeks, so I didn't actually know we dumped below 60K. That's interesting. Cool. Yeah, missed that buying opportunity. I mean, overall, still bullish. I think long term. I say this often. I'm a long term buyer of things that I believe in. I follow a little bit more of that, just kind of slow and steady growth for me. You know, I'm not a day trader. I try not to do that. I mean, it's just pure gambling in my head when I do that. Sometimes I win, often I lose. So better use of my time is to just focus on Bitcoin.com and all the things that we're building. So yeah, I mean, like I'd say conference wise, maybe Cole can jump into. We actually met Cole over at the Blockchain Futurist Conference in Toronto, which was the second conference I went to over the last couple of weeks. We went to ABS in Taipei in Taiwan. Totally different vibes between Asia and North America. And I mean,
can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, I mean, like Asia in general. I mean Taiwan especially too. Very much more hopium, more happy vibes, more like there's VCs pounding the pavement, trying to find the next big projects they want to put money into. I think there's like extreme optimism across the board in terms of like just building and working on new things and finding new ways to, I don't know, tokenize things or create new blockchains or new L2s. There was a huge presence from Ton. And just general, like I'd say the vibe was like happy, optimistic, maybe erring on the side of greed. And then in Toronto, it was a totally different vibe. And I kind of knew, I don't know. I mean, I'm Canadian originally. We're kind of a self-hating people in some ways, like, or maybe a self-pitying people. I think it's sort of like, we grow up with this big American neighbor down south, and we pride ourselves on just basically being not American, which is kind of like a weird, I don't know, low T stance. But I think that vibe is kind of picked up in the crypto scene as well, where it seems like everyone's kind of like coming at crypto in a more apologetic perspective of like deferring to compliance, deferring to regulators, begging regulators to just make us make the industry more safe for people to do the things. Whereas I felt like in Asia, everyone's just building stuff regardless of whatever the current rules are, the current administration is, whatever the governments say. They're just like, now we're just building stuff and we're going to keep building until we're told not to. But in Canada, it very much felt like this vibe of asking permission or like seeking permission from regulators to be like, is it okay if we keep doing this here? I'm not sure. And then even like, I don't know, it felt like everyone was kind of like deferring to the suits. Like they had the Coinbase CEO of Canada there who was banging the drum on like, we need saner, more clear regulations, which is great. I don't disagree. But I think when that tone gets struck early on in a conference, everyone just starts banging that same drum of like, the software has been installed into, enough people's heads where everyone on stage is just talking about compliance and regulation. And it's like, fuck is this? Yeah. Overall though, like people were still building and doing cool stuff. It's just a totally different vibe between, I don't know, Canada and like Taipei. Yeah.
Cole, what's your thoughts?
My thoughts on my gut feeling on the market.
Yeah, or you could, if you'd like to comment on what Corbin was just discussing there with the vibes, regulation, and yeah.
At the conference, yeah. So that's where I met Corbin, just to the listeners that aren't aware. And that was near the end of the conference. I was going to leave. My girlfriend, she was going to get me to leave a couple hours earlier than that. But I said, no, I want to stay and network more. Really glad I did. I met Corbin. I met the other people at the booth at Bitcoin.com. That was cool. And the vibes in general were similar to what Corbin is saying. There was some hesitancy from people. You could tell people weren't yeah, there's a common concern a lot of people have with regulation in Canada because of there being some uncertainty. And I do notice a lot of people are afraid to do things in the US and Canada. And so it makes sense why that kind of vibe would be detected there at the meetup a little bit. I didn't experience it the whole time I was there with everybody, but I can see that a little bit in general. And my gut feeling of the market, I'm very bullish, very bullish. I see Bitcoin hitting new all-time highs easy before the end of the year, and the bull run next year for sure. I see this current cycle we're in not much different than previous cycles. If anything, it's more bullish than previous cycles for Bitcoin to go past all-time highs, non-inflation adjusted, before the halving, right? The actual adjusted Bitcoin, or the inflation adjusted Bitcoin all-time high is more like, I think, 79K US or something along those lines. But I think this cycle we're in is playing out pretty similar to the rest of them that we've had, which is very good. And that makes me very bullish, looking very forward to the near future. Well, I mean, like Corbin said, he holds long term, and I do as well. I'm looking forward to the short term future and the long term future. Yeah.
Nice. David, anything to add? You contributed this chart, which I've got up here on the screen, which is showing the gains per month for Bitcoin, gain in P&L basically for Bitcoin of historically by the month. And as you can see, the last quarter of each year tends to be greener, the biggest gains.
Yeah. But you can also see that September is slightly negative, right? On the 10-year average. So this has made me, I would say, cautious for the short term for September, because I mean, just if it adheres to this kind of thing, and I've heard from some of the other macro people I follow that there might be some reasons.
Sorry about that.
That was Graham, right? Yeah, I had to put my phone outside of the booth. Yeah, so I think that September could be maybe slightly negative, not just for this chart, but some of the other things that I've heard from different macro people. But I would just echo what Cole says for seeing all-time highs this year. I think there's a very good chance of that. And yeah, I mean, I think that not just in crypto, but in the general economy, we're probably we're looking like this is gonna be maybe a barn burner of a fourth quarter. So very bullish as well.
I guess, what do you guys, is anyone actually buying anything? Like, or are you guys kind of just like bag holding right now? Like, are you deploying capital at this point?
I am, I'm deploying capital. Yeah. I'm not buying any more Bitcoin or anything like that, but I am looking at some other things. Like, I still think that Ethereum is so hated, right? I feel like one of the biggest narratives of this year has been Ethereum maxis getting upset and their panties in a twist over attacks against them. And Solana people and the Solana community kind of enjoying that. So I do think that there could be a hated rally, the Ethereum hated rally. I heard from one trader that I follow that Nomad. I don't know if you guys know Nomad. He's like one of the biggest OGs in the crypto space. He has this very famous indicator that he used. He hasn't used it this cycle, but he used it a lot last cycle and the cycle before, 17 and 21. And it basically crawled Twitter and saw how angry and how like ferocious and fast Ethereum maxis would come to defend any criticism. And he said when all of those things dried up, when all those defenders eventually stopped defending, that was a decent time to get into Ethereum. And when it became very ferocious, right, and strident, that was a good time to be out. And so I don't know if you guys are on Twitter much, but when Solana people or other coins, other people from different communities attack Ethereum, you don't see this kind of ferocious counter attack from Ethereum people as much these days. I think that might be an indicator. But anyway, I mean, that's not scientific at all, and not financial advice.
ETH bulls have capitulated.
Yes, there you go. Thank you, Graham.
Yeah, I'm to answer Corbin's question there. I am definitely bag holding and buying with any extra that I get, any extra dollars I have, whenever I get paid in any way, I'm buying. Yeah, I'm very risk on. Yeah, like maybe 98% risk on. How's that? Like something like that.
Yeah. I think
over 90%.
I'm sort of in the same position where like I'm spreading out what I have and what I can continue to receive into different bets, but it's kind of a wide swath of blue chips lately. I'm not doing the meme coining. I'm not doing the giga shit coinery. But I'm taking a few punts here and there on some like low caps that I think have strong utility and potential strong narratives. I'm looking at like privacy coins primarily. I'm holding BTC, ETH, some BCH. What else do I have on my list?
Do you have any
here?
Solana?
I do have a Sol bag. I actually just opened it just to check as you were trashing my ETH bag. I had to look to see if Solana was pumping, and it's not doing anything. So I think you're totally high. So I mean, make it, if you're going to talk so much great stuff about Solana, at least make it go up. Because at this point, it's a stable coin. I don't understand what I'm doing holding this thing.
Well, my ETH bag is my biggest bag, so I'm very biased towards that right now.
Me too, man. Me too. I think there's a strong potential for ETH, and I think with the ETH gas fees coming down to a point where it's actually usable again, and maybe this is a strong narrative of like L2s have really taken a lot of the load off, but there is also this narrative now of like, have the L2s taken off too much of a load now, where they're getting too good of a deal from these what do they call them, the blobs? David, you've probably been following this as well.
Yeah, the blobs. Yeah, I think it's mostly just people who are looking at price and they're frustrated with price not moving,
and
so then they're trying to find a reason why the price isn't moving in the way they want to move. And so one easy thing to point to is, well, there's so many L2s, and the L2s must be the reason why Ethereum price isn't going up. And I imagine that once if and when Ethereum starts to move up, these kinds of problems will magically go away.
Maybe a question for Cole, since we've got an expert on the line. I guess when you see the market sentiment going bullish or bearish, how are you seeing that impact merchant adoption? Within the Coinos network, and maybe before we. Or maybe explain what Coinos is, and then jump into that question.
Yeah, tell us about Coinos, Cole, please.
Sure, and then we'll jump into that question after. Yeah, sure. It's a good question. Yeah, so Coinos is a Bitcoin Lightning wallet. I can quickly say my quick story into my intro into Bitcoin. I heard about Bitcoin in 2013. Didn't dive in because I wasn't smart enough, obviously. And got in at late 2014, early 2015, around that time frame. And then I didn't actually really see the value in it until many years later. And then when I did see the value in it, I went almost all in on it with all the money I had saved up from my construction management career. I was a superintendent managing tower construction, new construction. So those big concrete towers that go up, I would put the glass in, or I would get my guys to do that. And then from there, I just transitioned into Bitcoin full time. And then a couple years into me transitioning into Bitcoin full time, I came across the Lightning Network. I didn't even touch a Lightning Network until a few years after it was out, even I think 3 or 4 years after Lightning Network was out and available. And when I started using it, I saw Bitcoin transacting so fast and so cheap, and that made me really see the value of Lightning. So I met Adam, who's the founder of Coinos. As you'll see, as you're scrolling down there, you're coming up to Adam's picture there. So yeah, that's me and Adam. Basically, me and him run the company as of right now. Whenever we have dev work, we just outsource it on a case-by-case basis. We do have various ambassadors around the world who are onboarding merchants for us in different countries, different cities. And then we have a community in Vancouver who also, they help us onboard merchants here. They spend Bitcoin at merchants. They help us with that because it helps keep the merchants alive and fresh and kind of like alert. Because when we have a Bitcoin merchant and they have no Bitcoin transactions, if they have one Bitcoin transaction every 4 months, in general, their employees are not going to be very ready with understanding how to receive it. So then when that Bitcoiner goes there to spend Bitcoin with being the first person in 4 months, then they're not going to have the best experience because the cashier is not going to understand in some cases, right? In some cases, but in general, in Vancouver, I can confirm that we do have volume at almost all of our merchants, and we've made it easy enough to a point where one of our options for merchants is to have a QR code the size of your phone taped on the cashier's counter, and then the customer would basically just scan the QR code that's taped on the cashier's counter, and then when the Bitcoin gets sent, and that QR code is the owner's Bitcoin, Lightning, or Liquid wallet. So basically when the person scans that QR code, then the owner's wallet page pops up. You can choose Bitcoin, Lightning, or Liquid. To the listeners who haven't heard of Liquid, it's a layer 2 of Bitcoin, and Lightning is a layer 2 of Bitcoin as well. Lightning is off-chain, and Liquid is an on-chain layer 2. Lightning is an off-chain layer 2. So basically, when the customer would send the Bitcoin, then a little printer, which is about half the size of my phone in diameter, it's about 4 inches by 3 inches by 2 inches. And then the printer will print out a receipt as soon as the owner's wallet receives the Bitcoin. And it's less than 1 second when you're doing it with Lightning. This way, the cashier or the waitress or waiter or bartender at the restaurants that are using us, they don't even need to use any sort of device, not even a cell phone. They just need to watch the printer. So they tell the person to scan the QR code, and then they just watch the printer. When the printer prints out that receipt, okay, see ya, have a good one. And that's one of the options. And then another option is that people can have the tablet like you have open in your background there. Some waitresses have that because a lot of restaurants in Vancouver give the waitresses tablets to go to each of the tables. So in that case, you would just add Coinos as a button on your current existing POS tablet. There's also franchises that are using us. And one of them is a cafe in Vancouver called Artigiano. And anyone who has lived in Vancouver for a few years knows about Artigiano because it's so popular. And they have over 20 locations in general in their franchise. So for them to add a Coinos button, a Bitcoin button to their official POS, their fiat POS that they use, for them to add a Coinos button was not difficult, is what the GM was telling me and Adam when we signed them up. So we are integratable in many ways with even fiat POSs, right? And then it turns into a fiat and a Bitcoin POS. So Coinos is it's a Bitcoin, it's a Lightning wallet that also operates with on-chain Bitcoin, which is the normal Bitcoin everyone's used to, and Liquid. Okay, so when you have your money on Coinos, it defaults to Lightning. So if my wallet says $500, it's $500 in Lightning Bitcoin. If Corbin pulls up his QR code, or if Corbin gives me his on-chain Bitcoin.com wallet, then I can just paste that in my Coinos send screen, and then it sends it to him as on-chain Bitcoin. Coinos does that swap. Like we do that swap for you from Lightning into on-chain Bitcoin. Same with Liquid as well. The user doesn't need to worry about swapping back and forth Lightning to Bitcoin. There's a bunch of other Lightning wallets out there that make you manually do the swap for you. Or sorry, they manually make you do the swap. So with Coinos, we've made it so easy with the QR code detection. It makes it straightforward enough for even people in their 70s to use. There's business owners who are very old school that have used it. And it's a web wallet. Yeah. Yeah.
Are you guys able to, or maybe share any information regarding merchant adoption and their use? I guess their use cases. Are they holding the Bitcoin? Like, do you find like these cafes or the restaurants, are they taking their payment and then keeping it in BTC, or are they looking to exit into fiat via like external swaps or things like that?
And just to follow up to that, I'd like to know like what the profile of the merchants that you're adopting is like, and how do you go about getting them in? Yeah.
Absolutely. So with the type, or with the how many merchants, regarding how many merchants are holding their Bitcoin and selling, or versus the ones who are selling, most of them, and we can see on chain, of course, in our database, most of them are hodling, and some of them are actually paying some of their suppliers in it. So there's for example, there's a nice upscale Mexican restaurant just down the street from where I am as we speak. They buy their meat from a supplier, and that supplier accepts Bitcoin. So that's kind of cool. There's also a distillery that, they make spirits, and they literally make the spirits in their factory, and they sell their spirits in Bitcoin to bars that are accepting Bitcoin as payment as well. So I would say exact percentage, I don't know. I would say probably 3/4 are hodling. But a lot of, we do understand some merchants that need to sell into dollars into their bank account. They got costs. Totally get it. I'm totally okay with onboarding merchants, even if they have the intent of selling their Bitcoin for dollars. Like after I give it to them for a coffee. Totally okay with that, because at the end of the day, I get to spend Bitcoin there. Other Bitcoiners in the world get to spend their Bitcoin. So it's a win-win. I mean, it's a win for us still, even if the merchant is dumping their Bitcoin. And to the other point about what are the kinds of merchants, Graham, was your question? Yeah. The kinds of merchants in general?
Yeah. What kind of person, what kind of merchant like decides to sign up?
Yeah, the most success we've had are the mom and pops types of stores. So the non-franchise types, where it's just the owner himself might even be working there on a regular basis or half the time. Those kinds of stores. We've also, like I said, we have a couple franchises, but it's easiest to get those mom and pops types of stores, the singular ones that are like one-offs. Yeah.
Are these people like already orange pilled? They already know about Bitcoin, and they're just looking as a way to get some now through their business? Or is it more like you go there and pitch this thing to them?
Yeah, that's good question. I would say 90% of the business owners are not orange pilled, do not have exposure to Bitcoin. Almost 90%. I don't know. I would say 90. I would say 90% based on my experience. And only about 10% of them are already orange pilled and are already a fan of Bitcoin. So part of the way that we get them on board with it, even though they don't have any Bitcoin, is we just let them know the value of it and why they benefit. Focusing on what's in it for them. Why do they benefit? Guaranteed increased sales. That's one thing, right? Because it is a guarantee I can give comfortably, right? Because they're going to have this whole wave of the Bitcoin community start coming to their shop now, right? And the type of people, I would say, middle-aged, not even millennial. Like some people would assume it's millennial owners or millennial. I wouldn't even say that. Yeah, middle-aged, 40.
So
50.
Cole, the pitch to them is you're going to get the more sales from the Bitcoin community. You're going to cut out the middleman on transaction fees a little bit, like that 3% credit card fee. I assume that the fees you guys are charging are less than that. Maybe you can go into that, but and then maybe is it also a conversation where you sort of have to convince them, like, okay, you should consider not only accepting Bitcoin, but like holding it because look at the chart. Is that part of the conversation when you're trying to onboard these people?
Yeah, the number go up part does come up often. And it's definitely, we can all agree that Bitcoin is it's the greatest hedge against inflation over the past like 14 years, I would say. If you look at everything over the past 14 years, Bitcoin's been such a good hedge against inflation. And so that does come up, and then they get worried about negative volatility. So I just tell them stuff like, don't sell low. I've lost money with negative volatility as well. I bring myself down to their, I don't know if I want to say bring myself down to their level, because that makes it sound like I'm above them. I'm not above them. I just got into Bitcoin before them. But I bring myself down to like their wavelength when I talk like that. I say, hey guys, I've lost a bunch of money with Bitcoin before, with negative volatility, but it's okay. I learned to just not sell low. It's going to come back. And so that does come up sometimes. And regarding the fees, it is the biggest, one of the biggest things is that one of the biggest things we say is that the merchant avoids credit card fees, because credit card fees are a lot, up to 4.35% Visa and MasterCard charge. That's crazy, charging the merchant. So with us, it's actually the only fee we charge is a 0.1% conversion fee, only when which you only incur when you withdraw your Bitcoin from Coinos into an external non-Lightning wallet. Yeah, and then you get the 0.1% conversion fee. There's no withdrawal fee. No
that answers the question that I'm sure, like I see on our Twitter, we've got a lot of the Bitcoin Cash folks, and I think for them they're there's a lot of similarities between, like, I think your like Coinos's a goal of onboarding people to merchants, and Bitcoin Cash, that's like the bread and butter for BCH, right? They've always been focusing on this peer-to-peer cash narrative. It's in the title of the Bitcoin white paper. A lot of those early OG Bitcoiners that were focused on the merchant adoption side of stuff ended up going towards the big block scaling side of things. And I guess just to I guess infer what was being said. This is a custody wallet, right? So it's custodial, but when you move it back on chain or you move off custody, that's where that 0.1% fee is incurred. Correct?
Exactly.
Cool.
Yeah, there's the auto withdraw feature is pretty popular with people, where you can set your threshold in your wallet to, let's say, $200, and then you can set a reserve balance on your wallet as well. So your wallet will never auto withdraw below your reserve balance. So you could have your Bitcoin.com non-custodial wallet set up as your auto withdraw. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I think like what I found really interesting when we met, Cole, was that it was, you were such a refreshing guy to talk to at the conference, specifically related to Bitcoin, because most people, when they start talking about Bitcoin, it immediately goes into price, greed, number go up. But you were coming at it from like utilitarian perspectives, which I think is still it's the most important narrative that I think we often get distracted by the charts and the price and the hopium and the hype and the Michael Saylor banging the drum that we're all going to be bajillionaires. Like, sure, we all love those ideas. It sounds great in theory, but in practice, there is this need for people to actually use it. So I was really excited to see someone, focusing on that, both coming up with these solutions in terms of experimenting with, the layer 2s and seeing what's possible with the current tech. So yeah, I thought it was a really, really interesting conversation. That's why largely I wanted to get you in touch with these guys, see if we could kind of jam a little bit. And I think it's an opportunity for us. We've got, a great following of Bitcoin users as well as Bitcoin Cash users. And I think there aren't enough bridges being built to allow those different communities to always talk. There's still tribalism in cryptocurrency, it's human nature and everything. But seeing like what are the similarities, like where do we find common ground, and finding Bitcoiners that are still focused on the cash utility merchant adoption side of stuff. It's really encouraging to see. And I guess I'd be curious to know like where you guys see the adoption going. Are you guys expanding outside of the Vancouver area? Like, are there specific regions that you guys are focusing on for Coinos, or what's your guys' growth strategy there?
Absolutely. Yeah. We are international anywhere where Bitcoin is legal, obviously. So not North Korea. So nobody use a Coinos wallet in North Korea, for example.
Sorry,
But yeah,
Kim Jong.
anywhere. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Even though, you know what's so funny about that topic is that North Korea was responsible for how many hundreds of millions of dollars of hacks that year in 2022 or whatever, and then yet it's illegal there, right? It's so funny. Well,
Yeah.
sorry, not funny for people who lost money. Take that back, but it's funny,
Just
kind of like the idea,
for sure,
right?
They're
Yeah.
they're a high volume region, largely by
How did you,
Lazarus.
Cole, how did you get these merchants down in Brazil? Have you guys been traveling down there, or is that a word of mouth thing?
Yeah, it was basically a word of mouth thing because there is people mainly in that small city down there that's the really densely populated one called Rolante. Rolante is, and it's in the state Rio Grande do Sul in Brazil, so it's southern Brazil. And yeah, they have, oh man, it's crazy. That Brazil's our biggest customer for sure. Word of mouth. They found us online and they saw us posting a lot on our social media, being very active in Vancouver, and then that motivated them to kind of ramp it up a notch with them. Yeah. Yeah, and then I did. If you go to if you just like quickly go up to Central America, I've been to El Salvador, Bitcoin Beach. I've been to I've been to Guatemala, Bitcoin Lake, and Bitcoin Jungle in Costa Rica. Those are all solid Bitcoin communities where a lot of people there are almost fully living on a Bitcoin standard, meaning like they actually don't need dollars in most cases in those states. So that's why we have a couple pins on the map there. Miami, I've been to Miami a bunch of times. I'm sure you guys have too, with like lots of like conferences and stuff there. So I go there to promote. And then Ontario.
Are you guys seeing any adoption in emerging economies, Southeast Asia, Africa, areas like that? Have you guys seen any uptick in growth out in those regions?
No, I'm very, very open to that. If anyone wants to reach out to us, let us know. We don't charge anything to set people up either, right? No maintenance fees. We just care most about delivering the vision of Bitcoin, right? Like we care most about that, right? And that is the electronic peer-to-peer cash system. Says it. The big header on the white paper says to use it as a peer-to-peer electronic cash system.
Yeah, so, man, it's just sometimes I found when I was talking to you in Toronto, I was just like, man, like I felt like I was talking to like Bitcoiners from like 2015, and I was just like, this is such a refreshing conversation because, man, I remember being at these Bitcoin meetups in Tokyo and getting into these like very confrontational debates. Like I remember seeing my friend Aaron. He used to kind of co-run some of the Bitcoin meetups, so he was always there, and we would be smashing beers on Wednesday night at Kitsune in Shibuya, kind of in between Shibuya and Ebisu, and we would be getting into these long-form debates where some of the Bitcoiner guys would be taking the stance of, no, you shouldn't spend Bitcoin. That's the dumbest thing you can do. And they'd be taking the stance of like, no, you don't use, it's Gresham's law. You got to focus on your lower tier value coins. That's what you spend. You spend your Litecoin and then you hold your Bitcoin. You don't ever sell. You never sell. And I think like there was folks that even felt like merchant adoption was a net negative for Bitcoin because every merchant that adopted Bitcoin would ultimately become sell pressure on the price. And it always felt like part of the Bitcoin community was just talking their bags to try to like pump their bags instead of pump this adoption, which ultimately in theory would actually pump your bags much more. But it was this like short-sighted thinking that I always felt that it just drove me mental. So when I was chatting to you, who's like a Bitcoin guy, and you're just like, no, you should use it like peer-to-peer cash. And I was like, what the heck? Who am I talking to? What is going on here? This is like, because most of the interactions I've had with a lot of the Bitcoiners has just been on like, I'd say Michael Saylorism. They follow that tribe. And I think when I often forget that there are tribes within tribes, and for sure there's people, I've seen it especially in the Bitcoin L2 space recently, where there's people trying to build on Bitcoin. There's people trying to make L2s, Turing complete with smart contracts. There's folks that are building on Liquid and Lightning, and they're all trying to kind of approach some of these problems in different ways. Then there are, of course, the digital gold, Bitcoin maximalists, never touch anything else. Number go up. Who cares about utility? Just pump my bags. It's like debauchery, greed, degeneracy. And yeah, I wanted to just commend you on just holding true to some of those original tenets of Bitcoin. It's really refreshing to hear.
Can I jump in here with a little bit of a wet blanket? Is that okay? So
wet blanket.
Wet blanket time. David's wet blanket time. No, so I mean, Lightning has had kind of a rocky road up to now, and I just would like to address some of the things with that. So the fact that you are a custodial solution, I think it's quite honestly a good thing, because the opening and closing of channels, and then like having to like splice a channel if you accept more or if you want to receive more Bitcoin than you have deposited when you've initially opened it. I think these kinds of problems are pretty big for non-custodial users. The question then becomes, though, or I have a couple questions, but the first is, it seems to me then, if you maintain this kind of model, you'll have maybe an over-reliance on centralization in Lightning. I don't know if you have any thoughts on this.
Yeah, no, it's good you brought that up. It's not all sunshines and rainbows, right? Even though we wish it was, of course. We all four of us on this call, we want a perfect solution to everything, right? To like the financial system, right? So, Lightning it's not perfect. It does fail sometimes. Lightning nodes having a Lightning wallet in a non-custodial way is complicated. It's not easy. I don't recommend it for people if they're beginners. If they're experienced with running Bitcoin nodes themselves, they will still have a little bit of a learning curve with Lightning nodes. But if you are savvy enough with Bitcoin nodes, I would say that go for it with the Lightning node. Now, using us, so there is a centralization aspect there with Lightning. Absolutely there is. And because you are kind of like our Lightning node has channels open with the other biggest Lightning providers, such as Strike. Most people here have heard of that on the call. People listening, Strike. There's Bitcoin Beach, which is Blink now. Blink is getting pretty popular, is very, very popular. And there's and Bitcoin Jungle is its own as well. So we make sure we have channels open with them. And that way, when people use our wallet, they don't run into issues as much. If people have their own node, their own Lightning node, they can use an app called Zeus, which gives you kind of an effect on your phone, like an app. But if your node fails at home, Zeus can't magically fix every problem with it. So if someone pays with their own node at a Coinos merchant, they run into issues more often, not every time, but more often than someone using a custodial Lightning wallet. The auto withdraw feature that we have, it can be used in a pretty good way, I would say, with like the Bitcoin.com wallet. If people want to hold the cryptocurrencies that they want, no problem. If you want to go to a store and use Lightning, just load from Bitcoin.com into your Coinos wallet, as Bitcoin. And if when you want to go back from Coinos into your Bitcoin.com wallet and switch it into whatever you want, a Bitcoin Cash or whatever, then you can do that. Yeah. So the auto withdrawal features.
It effectively becomes like the Lightning wallet becomes almost your hot wallet for your spending of BTC, within these different areas, which is I think quite cool. I mean, I think there's always going to be these purists within every crypto community that says, well, if it's not non-custodial and if it's not zero fee, and if it's there's a million reasons that the things will be imperfect from some people's perspective. But if it does provide utility and it gets people using crypto or Bitcoin as money, it is still a net benefit in the sense that it does grow the network effect of Bitcoin. And I think that is still the strongest reason why Bitcoin remains number one. Its network effect is still the largest, in spite of, say, some of these pain points. And I'm not shy in saying I don't fully buy the Lightning. Like, I'm not drinking that Kool-Aid. I mentioned this to you in terms of like how we've spent a lot of time and effort looking into like how can we build Lightning and offer that in a non-custodial way to our extremely normie retail user base, and you just can't, not in a non-custodial way. I think what you guys have done though is found a way to offer it to the retail to the retail user base, but you have to do it in a custody way to kind of reduce that friction of maintaining liquidity across channels, dealing with these different weird state managements and opening, closing channels for users. None of these people they never need to know this stuff. I think I think at the panel I spoke on at the Blockchain Futurist, I'd mentioned like the email analogy of like, in the old days you had to set up, POP. You had to decide, are you going to do a POP email or an IMAP? What's the SMTP domain? What's the port numbers for these different things? Are you doing SSL signing on this thing as well? Like what's going on? Mom and dad always had to call their kids to say, how am I setting this thing up? Or they'd have to call, SashTel. They'd call up SashTel, wait on the hold for 30 minutes, and then finally get through to someone who'd walk them through that painful process of getting their email going. And it's just that was not good enough. And now, you've got kind of one-click federated logins with like Gmail or Proton or any of these other things. They're considerably much more easier for everyone to use, including mom and dad. And I think that's kind of where Bitcoin and crypto in general needs to go. Yeah.
Good. I have one last wet blankety question.
Let's poop on the parade.
One more.
Let's go. All right.
You almost killed me with the last one, buddy.
It's been a love fest. Give me one more. Just so I'll echo again what Corbin is saying. I have no problem with custodial solutions, and in fact, Corbin and Graham know this. I advocate these kinds of solutions for, like my parents, right? I don't think that they should be dealing with self-custodial solutions in any way, shape, or form. They don't have time. They don't have the inclination, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, but that being said, so I've read things that the overall capacity of Lightning has kind of peaked and waned this year. Are you concerned at all that maybe the overall interest in being on Lightning is waning too much? Or are people like, so for example, are people then now chasing after the new shiny thing, which is like Bitcoin L2s and stuff?
Yeah, so I would say I'm glad you brought up the Lightning Network capacity. I do follow that. I believe right now, what's the capacity? I think it's like 5,600 Bitcoin or so. I can't remember exactly, but I know that when last time I looked at the chart, the Lightning Network capacity is hovering near all-time highs right now, actually. And what raised my confidence a lot in the Lightning Network popularity and in the Lightning Network in general, with popularity and the amount of people using it, is the fact that it was reaching new all-time highs even during 2022. Like throughout 2022, Bitcoin's price was going down and Lightning Network capacity was literally like going up. I thought that was really interesting. And Bitcoin's hash rate was also going up even when the prices in 2022 were going down. They were going down. So Lightning Network capacity seems to me to be holding pretty strong, up at all-time highs. And I like to think it's going to keep growing with capacity. And what Lightning Network capacity means to some of the viewers on the spaces who might not know is it's basically the amount of Bitcoin being used in Lightning channels, essentially. Oh, is that? Oh, yeah. Okay. Cool. Nice.
We brought up a chart for those just listening on X. We also stream on YouTube.
That's awesome.
And stuff.
Yeah, great. Yeah, having the chart there is good. Yeah, the Glassnode is also really good for data, but this is also a good data source, I think. And yeah, so the Lightning Network is, I feel like it's pretty strong right now. And the capacity, the capacity means the amount of Bitcoin, to finish my last thought, the amount of Bitcoin that are in the Lightning nodes that people are setting up in general, globally, right? Yeah. So one Lightning node can have 10 Bitcoin of liquidity. Another one can have 2 Bitcoin of liquidity, right? Yeah. So I would say I'm not very concerned specifically of the popularity of Lightning Network dwindling.
Are you guys hedging your bets at all, or following any of the latest in the Bitcoin layer 2 space? We've seen I just the last couple weeks, I've met with teams and seen different folks talking about their solutions to Bitcoin layer 2 scaling. I think a lot of folks are like, this BitVM2 white paper just dropped, I think a few days ago, where they've got this BitVM bridge, and they've now taken the idea of BitVM requiring, I think, 70 on-chain transactions down to just 3, using some snark computation and some other stuff. But the idea, I guess, is that a lot of these L2s have been kind of waiting for a better version of BitVM to safely stake or bridge Bitcoin on layer 1 into a new, whether it's sidechain or layer 2. However, I think to the end user, they just see it as like, I guess, another place to hold Bitcoin. But for us, I guess those little details sometimes matter. But I guess, are you guys following any of those L2 projects, the ones that are perhaps looking at EVM or Rust based, or any of these other kind of smart contract enabled Bitcoin layer 2s that are bringing that DeFi ecosystem from Ethereum and other chains onto Bitcoin?
So there is a lot of talk about that in a lot of different communities that I'm involved in, and a lot of the Telegram group chats that I'm also in and managing. A lot of talk about it. It's trending a lot, and it makes sense why it's trending. It's this new thing that's like coming to Bitcoin, right? The L2s that we primarily focus on the most are still just Lightning and Liquid as Coinos. Myself included, I'm focusing on those ones the most, but it doesn't mean that I'm keeping myself completely blind to all the other Bitcoin L2s. I think there's a lot of really interesting ideas that kind of pique my interest in such a way where I'm just like, that's kind of, I didn't expect Bitcoin to have this operability before, right? I didn't think about it that way before. So something that was interesting, Taproot Wizards. A lot of us know about the ordinals boom that happened in Taproot Wizards. Now that did make the fees spike, which is good for miners, obviously. And the reason why, I was talking to some of the Taproot Wizards at the Bitcoin conference, not this year, but in 2023. So there was a bunch of guys in wizard hats in the audience, right? And I just thought to myself, like, man, so many guys like talk bad about these people. So, I mean, why don't I want to go over there? I want to pick their brain. I want to talk with one of them and like kind of see what he has to say. I'm not just going to like look at them as losers because other people say they're losers. No, I want to go pick their brain, right? So I went to sit down beside one. And he said that a lot of them, him and a lot of others, believe that it could be a good thing to have fees get high on Bitcoin because it incentivizes more miners, which essentially makes the hash rate continue to go up. And you want that. And if you're a fan of Bitcoin and you really have a lot of money in Bitcoin, you want the hash rate to stay high and consistent. We don't want a ton of miners capitulating, right? Like, we don't want a ton of miners to shut off all their machines, right? I know there's always going to be the stronger and stronger miners that are going to be created, but that doesn't change the fact that the miners would still have to sell all their old machines. It's a big process for them to upgrade to new miners. So some people just brush it off like, oh, it's okay, they'll just buy new, bigger miners when they have to. It's not. It's a very, very big process for them to do that. So I'm aware of that. So that's why I'm not like, I don't have Taproot Wizards. I don't have ordinals. I wouldn't even say I'm necessarily a fan of them, but it's a different perspective, demand for the fees to spike a little bit in that regard could be okay, right? But at the same time, I understand people don't. There's a lot of the smaller people who don't have much money. They don't like when the fees are like $40, $50, $60, $70. I don't like it either. I was kind of annoyed. I'm like, man, why $70 for a transaction? So I just try to stick to like Lightning and Liquid for my transaction savings. And there's a lot of other options as we all know as well, right?
Yeah. It seemed like a decent kind of solution for the security budget problem, which, quite frankly, I don't think Bitcoin has figured out yet. But fees have come down, right? They they've returned back to Earth. So
Turn back to Earth.
Although I did see fees spiked significantly yesterday with the Babylon going live there, and you can now they opened up like 1,000 BTC to be staked on Babylon, and people are trying to get into that. But
I saw that too.
Short-lived.
Exactly. So again, I think the Ordinal and Runes people thought that this might be permanent or semi-permanent, but I mean, again, the interest wanes and then the prices come down. But
yeah, it was a spike. It didn't like hold up there. Yeah.
Are you guys working with any Bitcoin ATMs across US, Canada? Have you guys done any work with any of the ATM providers?
Yeah, it's cool you brought that up. We are working with an ATM company called Bitcoin Well, right? So the name is obvious why it's an interesting name, right? You put your dollars in it, you get Bitcoin out of the well, right? So we are working closest with them compared to any other ATM provider in Canada right now. They're just Canada-based as far as I know. Yeah, they're just Canada-based. And yeah, we're working with them. They don't have the Lightning function yet at their ATMs. Lightning ATMs are pretty rare. Yeah, they're very rare. Lightning ATMs, very, very rare. Yeah, and I think maybe it's because they don't want to deal with the liquidity channel balance, the liquidity node and channel balancing. I think that's part of it. But the Lightning ATMs, very rare. Yeah. We are open. Coinos is fully open source. Like our GitHub is on our link tree there. You'll see that. So if other ATM companies, we have talked to ATM companies. I just talked with the owner of one a month ago, actually. And he said he just kind of didn't want to deal with it because he doesn't think the demand would be very high for Lightning compared to on-chain.
Does Coinos or do you, I guess even individually, do you see value in other assets being used as cash as well? Like, do you ever see Coinos accepting more than Bitcoin? Whether that's Ethereum or Solana or stable coins or Bitcoin Cash or anything like those. Is that something that you guys are ever looking at or considering?
I would say I would have to say no for now. Anyways, we're trying to make it work as best we can with like what we have with the on-chain Bitcoin, Lightning, and Liquid for now. We just enabled eCash, so we have a cashew mint on our Coinos wallet. So that's like another thing that we've kind of added to the mix. So, but yeah, as a company, Coinos would want to, for now, at least like stick to those. Yeah.
Cool. Are you guys following any of the recent drama with regards to wrapped Bitcoin? Are you guys looking at any of these other types of custodied Bitcoin solutions? There was some recent news, I think in the last week or two, with regards to wrapped Bitcoin kind of changing owners, maybe not changing owners, maybe that's not the right word.
Yeah, they partnered with they partnered with a different company in a different jurisdiction. I think so. Now it's in Hong Kong and Singapore. It just so happens that the company that they partnered with is connected very strongly with Justin Sun and the Tron ecosystem, and so there was there were questions about the custody of those Bitcoin.
Yeah, I think MakerDAO was the first one that put up a proposal basically saying we're going to pull our WBTC as a result of this. Just they were concerned about the one-to-one backing of that in the event that that part of the team that they're concerned about is doing anything funny. I think Aave took a counter proposal. It did pass.
It did pass. It passed almost instantly.
Wow.
And was it one of the anonymous developers for Wrapped Bitcoin? I forgot his name, like Mew or something like that. He's part of the Jupiter team on Solana. So he helped develop Wrapped Bitcoin. And Jupiter, helmed by this guy, or at least, in some part controlled by this guy, they also decided to divest some amount, if not all of their WBTC as well on Solana. So it's
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
So there's.
Jump in.
I used to actually dabble in Wrapped BTC once upon a time, and it yeah, I kind of had my worries about it a little bit, whether it would like actually stay pegged, because when I like looked into it at the time, it didn't have a security aspect to it that would make me sure that it would stay pegged. That was my concern of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think as a result of this change in the wrapped Bitcoin side of stuff, there has been quite a few new players entering that space. Yeah, I see here on our list we've got CB BTC. There's T BTC, which is by the Threshold team. Then there's also DLC BTC that I believe has also been kind of exploring things. And a lot of these guys have backgrounds. Either they worked with BitGo and the WBTC team, or they have some of this experience in terms of like enterprise custodial solutions. But I think many of them are now, like, some of you guys might remember Ren BTC, which was quite cool. They had like Ren BTC, there was Ren BCH, there was Ren, I think they maybe even had a stable coin, and then there was Ren, of course. But they ultimately ended up getting wrecked, I believe, by FTX. They had a bunch of exposure there.
That's right.
They ended up becoming creditors there. But the whole project basically, fell to pieces as a result of that. But what was interesting is they did have the ability for users to mint and burn and access, the Ren BTC. So they had this like somewhat trust minimized bridge that had their own dark nodes that ran and secured this network. But ultimately, someone in their DAO or group ended up putting a lot of that BTC into, I don't know if it was the L1 BTC or if it was the Ren BTC, but they put it into FTX, and then FTX happened, and they got in some trouble. But so they're not really around, not really a thing anymore. But there has been this, I would say, like just like the groups are coming back out as a result of WBTC kind of doing some, I don't know if it's shady, they're just making some questionable decisions and causing the wrapped Bitcoin space to now move forward and say, like, okay, there's a better way to do this through these trust minimized bridges. I think Threshold, they allow users to mint TBTC and unmint TBTC, which is on Ethereum and other chains. So effectively, you can go from Bitcoin into this other, version of Bitcoin in a fairly trust minimized way. I mean, who knows, right?
Still a multi-sig though, right? At the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, if you get enough terrorists together and you can, in theory, kidnap enough people with their ledgers, with enough, guns to the heads, in theory, you might be able to pull this off. I wouldn't recommend doing that because that's, kind of violent and mean. But I think there's some other ones that are exploring how to do this in some different fashions that use some of this BitVM tech that's been explored and built on. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I mean, I'd say trust minimized is better than just, it's held in a Fireblocks custody wallet somewhere, by someone, by some group.
For me personally, I think if I was going to go with a wrapped Bitcoin custodial solution, I would definitely go with the Coinbase version, because I imagine it'll be regulated out the wazoo in America, and it'll probably be like secured in such a way where you can get the nominal value or the notional value back from the company via like a lawsuit or something.
I mean, has CB ever have they said whether they're insured or
I think it'll be, yeah, I imagine it'll be in such a way that it'll kind of have to be. They also already custody, I think, the most amount of Bitcoin in the world, right? Like, because they're the custodians for every single Bitcoin ETF in America, right? So all of that is custodied with
banks aren't
Coinbase
allowed
already.
to custody cryptocurrency due to SAB.
I'm going to disagree with you, David, in saying I think that's kind of lame.
Well, no, I said custodial solution. I said if I'm going to go with a custodial solution.
Oh, okay. Well, would you say a multi-sig is a custodial solution?
I would say that having it in a legal framework for a custodial solution is probably the way to go if you're going with custodial.
I guess for me, it's like I would want that ability to unmint or mint without permission via a contract or something like that.
Yeah, I mean,
that's
mine too. But it's not
you
there yet.
You deal with any CEX they go offline, and they always go offline at the most inopportune times where like things are ripping and you're like, okay, I think I'm ready to sell. Or it's like things are dumping and you're like, shit, I really want to like, I don't know, hedge. And then you're like, I can't get in. What's going on? Or, there is always that, potential risk of, it's a giant honeypot, when it's in, but you're right. There's enterprise security best practices that probably benefit that play.
But I mean, Corbin, I agree with you. I think this all begs the question: when decentralized, trustless, wrapped Bitcoin, right? I think that's the number one desire, number one use case for Bitcoin L2s is giving truly decentralized, as you said, minted and unminted Bitcoin, and then that you can then bridge.
It's zero knowledge proofs will save us all, whatever that is.
Maybe the tech,
some kind of magic there.
The Bitcoin L2 tech to me still seems a little hand wavy at this point. A lot of promises. Yeah. There's nothing on chain that comes close to that, though. As far as like,
I just see like every time I read something, it just seems like zero knowledge proofs. That's going to do it. Whatever that is, that'll fix it.
There's a lot of ZK
but there's
washing,
always,
It's like ZK washing. There's the green washing. There's going to be quantum washing.
But all these ZK things, they have verifiers and provers that are not on the Bitcoin network, right? You're like, ooh, ZK proofs, but who's actually running the proof? It's not the miners.
Well, it's verifiable, bro.
Exactly, by a third party.
All right, let's wrap it up here, gentlemen. Last chance. Cole, I want to ask you one last thing before we go, which is because before we were talking about adoption of like the P2P aspect of Bitcoin, like actually spending crypto. I just want to ask you a personal question, which is, when you spend Bitcoin at a merchant, do you like immediately replace that Bitcoin, or do you just like make a mental note, or what do you like? How do you work that in your head?
Yeah, I definitely. Well, I mean, I have bills I have to pay in general. In living in Vancouver, Canada, so I always have to bring my Bitcoin into my bank account to pay for bills because I don't get paid in dollars. So I'm kind of like I will replace when I spend. I will what's that?
Kind of do the full spend and replace type of.
Sorry, no, totally, yeah, absolutely, yeah. I spend and replace. If I have any money in my bank account, then I'll replace it with it, and pretty much. I try to, yeah.
All right, yeah.
I still hold dollars, like because I have bills, but yeah.
Sure.
Canadian loonies, not real dollars, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's better than the yen.
Canadian loonies.
It's better than the yen. That's true. Yeah,
not the world's reserve currency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Come on.
All right. Let's wrap it up. Cole, thanks so much for joining. It's really interesting to hear everything you had to say. And Corbin and David, thanks for your hot takes and good questions.
Cool.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. Yep. We're out. See you later.
Go visit coinos.io. Shill Cole's thing a little.